Notification. The content from When Justice Goes AWOL podcast is for informational purposes only. Views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not reflect those of our sponsors or employers. While efforts are made to ensure accuracy in content, information provided may not always be complete or current. Listeners rely on information at their own risk. When Justice Goes AWOL podcast is not affiliated with the military. Warning: this episode contains depictions of violent crime and other subjects of sensitive nature. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Nicole Charcotti, and I am your host of When Justice Goes AWOL. The first case that we're going to be looking at is It's a way that I have come to help cope and learn more about what happened to my fiancé. My fiancé, Nicholas Hokema, was unalived by an AWOL soldier, Jonathan King Lee. We'll get into more about who Lee was during another episode about when we interview somebody who was close to the first charges he was involved in. I'd like to start by telling you guys just a little bit about who Nick was, what he meant to me, and what I hope to get out of hopefully talking about this and talking to more people and just making these crimes a little bit more well-known, not only for protecting the community, but also just to get, thoughts, discussion out there, like how could we improve this system that is so flawed that sometimes people are literally let go with insurmountable evidence pointing to the fact that, yes, they committed these crimes. Yes, I believe that it could be handled a lot more differently than it is now. Let's get into the case of origin, if you will. This is When Justice Goes AWOL, and this is the story of Nick Hokema, my fiancé. So I've had some ups and downs in my own life related to just figuring out who I am as a person. Once I got sober, I decided after a couple of years that I didn't want to be alone. I wanted to share my life's journey with somebody else who had similar goals and similar ideas about like what they wanted to do with their lives and what kind of person they were. And I really wanted a genuine connection above all else. So I was going to take this very slow. So naturally I went to Facebook dating, but it had just come out. Not too many creeps on there yet. I think people get lonely, and we need that human connection. We need to feel like there is somebody waiting for us to get home and be okay, and just they can go on without their day because they know that. In my prompts, I asked people to tell me a joke. Like, tell me a joke and I might talk to you. He sent me one of those cheesy dad jokes, and it was something along the lines of, "Why are polar bears so good at flirting?" I didn't know the answer, so I was like, okay, I'll buy it. Why? Because they're natural icebreakers. And I laughed. I was like, okay, I'll talk to you. I'll see what you have to say besides a lame dad joke that kind of made me giggle. We started talking online, and we talked for weeks. I mean, weeks before we actually got the courage to meet up with each other. It wasn't necessarily, let's talk for a certain amount of time and then we'll think about it. It was just, we talked and we got to learn more about each other and the person behind the keyboard. Finally, he asked me, I mentioned I haven't seen the Joker movie yet because it come out that October with Joaquin Phoenix. And he goes, well, why don't I take you on a date and maybe we can go see that movie? So we met up at the comic book shop, and it was just nice meeting him. He looks sweet. He looks like his picture, which is always a plus. And we got to talking. We just started going through the aisles. I showed him some of the comic book works that I was into, Lost Deep Niles, a lot of dark, gritty stuff, the art of Garth Ennis, Ben Temple Smith. And he figured out that I liked Halloween and horror pretty quickly. He was more into superheroes, Gundam Wing. He looked at all the kits. But the date went on, and I figured out, okay, I'm probably going to spend a lot of time getting to know this guy because I like him. I like what I see, and I like what I hear, and I like him. And we took it really slow. I think that was why when he asked me to move in with him, I was just still taken away because I couldn't believe that somebody this cool or this amazing, and just somebody who could keep me talking and engaged and interested, wanted to get to know me further. And it was such an amazing feeling to know that somebody wanted me in their life like that. And it wasn't a terribly big place. We got just a one bedroom out of Tumwater, and we coexisted very well. There were times where some of his computer tech would spill out into the living room, and I would kindly remind him to just clean it up. Or the cats would chew on his cords, actions, consequences. So he got pretty good at that. He didn't want anything to happen to the cats, so he actually got one of those like tubing covers that you put over your cords. The cats still tried to chew on them though, because they have no survival instincts. Especially the one we rescued, Ragnar. He's a black cat that just started showing up at our place. So Nick didn't believe me that he was coming around, so I was just like, hey, I'm going to leave food out for him. We ended up trapping him, and he still lives with me. Brother Ritz and their sister Jolie. I loved our little family. There wasn't a single thing that I would have traded my family for. We never had kids, but just seeing him interact with the pets and having more pictures of him with the pets than I did of me and my own phone was just, I really loved him, and I wanted the best for all of us. Our family was perfect the way it was. So, January 14th, 2024, I was getting ready. It was evening. I was getting ready to go to a peer counseling training. I had interviewed with them for a job the week before, and they had invited me to this free training, which is amazing. And the night before, I was getting things together. I was a little wired. I was nervous. I don't know why. It was a training, but you just want to give your best and best foot forward. So he started teasing me about how I was going to be tired the next morning, how I wouldn't have energy to do anything, and I promised him that wouldn't happen. I promised him I would be on my game. So I was getting ready to go to bed, and I looked over at him. He was taking a break in between rides at his shift as a cab driver. He told me he loved me and to have a good night, and I told him I loved him and that I would see him tomorrow. He would get home from work, and he would crawl into bed next to me, and it just felt good rolling over and just putting my hand on his chest before I had to go up and get ready for work too. So January 15th, I got up that morning. I was groggy, and I start going out into the kitchen with my phone to kind of make coffee, wake up a little bit, and I see a message from his work. I see a message that says, "We're worried about Nick. None of us have heard back from him since this morning, and he has the cap." I called him right away. The first time I called him, it rang through, and his voicemail did the usual prompts, so I left him a message just telling him that this was unusual. He needed to call me back because me and other people were worried about him. Of course we were. And then I called his coworker and asked him details. Just, okay, how long? Way early in the morning? Is his car in the driveway? I ran out to check. It wasn't. It was still at the cab drop-off site. So I called the trainer for that program and let her know that I was not going to be available, that something had come up and no one had heard from my partner in many hours. I texted him, and then I tried calling Nick again. And here's where that little seed of doubt gets planted, where you start asking, maybe it's not okay. Just that little tiny moment where you think, I hope this doesn't get worse. But of course it can't, right? Because he's a good judge of character, and he's always come home before. He wouldn't just leave and not come back. I told him before that I was worried about him being a night shift driver for a cab company, and he reassured me about what a good judge of character he was and how he would always be on his game so that he came home. And I believed it too. During this time, I was also calling other people, my parents, of course, letting them know what was going on. I got a hold of my dad, and he told my mom what was going on. She was on her way to pick me up, and I called Nick again. I called him, and it rang 3 times before it sent me to voicemail. I just had that feeling. I had also called dispatch. They asked me questions that, of course, I considered, is it possible that he is experiencing a mental health emergency? Is it possible that there's somebody else and he was spending the night and just lost track of time and now he's feeling regret? And I told him, yeah, that's all fine and good, but he's never given me an indication like that, that he was that kind of guy. I was just trying to explain that and say, look, this is serious and you need to find the cab too. His boss had called me too, and we talked about finding the cab and what color was it, which cab was it, did it have tracking software? And of course it didn't, but I did so much to try and find him after Mom picked me up from our apartment, and we drove around maybe where he was supposedly seen last, which could have been anywhere. We drove all around town. I called friends to let them know what was going on, and everybody believed that we would find Nick. They said it was just a matter of time that we would find Nick. And then I got a call from Tumwater Police, who had taken this over. They were going to file a missing persons report at 12 p.m. that day. They wanted me to come into the station. Nick's boss was going to be there too to report the cab stolen. And I thought, this is good. They're taking this seriously. We're going to get more resources on this because we have to bring Nick home. There's no negotiation on that. So my mom and I waited and we drove to the police station together. And eventually they let us in. My mom was nice enough to go with me to Tumwater Police Department, and they took us into a conference room, and the window overlooked the outside. We could see the outside to the parking lot, and this man in a suit shows up, and he's walking up the steps with these other officers, and he looked official. When you have somebody official like that, it usually means it's serious. But it's like my judgment couldn't accept that he might actually be hurt or worse. So I sat there for what felt like an eternity and just waited. And sure enough, he came in. So this guy did come in with a couple other officers. And I looked out the window and I saw Nick's boss leaving. And I thought, okay, he already filled out the report. That's good. I'll give them whatever information that they need to know. Height, weight, eye color, hair color. I can give it all. Everything I can to help get him home. So I asked them how we got started. He was a detective. He sat down, he introduced himself. He worked for the Tukwila Police Department. And he started off by saying that he got the call around 3:30 in the morning to an unconscious male in the South Center Mall parking lot. And there was this pause. I think he knew he was about to destroy my world and just wanted one more second where I didn't live in that reality. The next thing he told me was, there's no easy way to say this, but Nick is deceased. I broke down. I went to this really dark corner of my head where I closed my eyes and I couldn't hear anything around me. All sound just went away. And then I heard this hum and I realized I was screaming. And my mom was just holding me, asking how. How did this happen? Not to Nick, not to him. He was going to propose to me later that year. I found out from a friend of his. He was looking at rings and showing a bunch of ideas of ones he had to a friend of mine and ones he was thinking about after I found out that Nick was gone. The first person I thought about was actually his sister. The year before she found out she was pregnant. Nick wasn't really a kid's guy, but if they were related to him, he tolerated them. But when he found out that his sister was having a baby, his eyes gave away how excited he was. After my mom drove us back home and told my dad what happened, I talked to a few friends just before going into my bed and passing out for the remainder of the day. I didn't want to think, I didn't want to feel, I didn't want to be conscious. It really felt like a bomb had gone off in my head. It was too much. It was too much to face just by myself. The one person who I wanted to tell me it was okay wasn't there. Losing Nick is the worst thing in my life that has happened to me up until this point. The aftermath of losing him just wasn't pretty at all. My parents and my friends, they love me, and I know they do, and they did their best. But there were some times that I just felt like nobody could possibly grasp what I was going through. To have somebody taken away like that, and just, how do you heal from losing somebody that you were convinced was going to be there for the remainder of your life? Our family went through a lot of difficulties. My mom ended up injuring her arm and her shoulder, falling off our back steps when she was feeding the birds, and I was thrown into a full-time caregiving position while trying to cope with what had happened to Nick and losing my apartment because I didn't have a job, not knowing what I was going to do next. Nick is gone, and there is no way to get him back, and I can never make what happened to him go away. Everybody was so convinced that it was somebody struggling with addiction, experiencing homelessness, some nefarious person who was desperate enough to kill Nick and steal his cab. Everyone expected that, but that is not what happened at all. Yes, the person who was responsible for murdering Nick. Yes, they were desperate. But in my opinion, from everything I have learned up on about this case and perpetrators and the military and pretrial confinement procedures, it's my opinion that Nick Hokema shouldn't be gone. It's my opinion that Nick Hokema shouldn't be dead. Because the more I learned over time about this case, the angrier and angrier I became. The only thing that I am armed with in this is information. Public, totally accessible to anybody who wants to look it up. But I also have my own experience going through the court processes and dealing with victims' advocates and asking questions that I still have yet to receive answers from. So this is my attempt to learn more, discuss more, talk about more that can be done to better protect civilians when these crimes happen and the perpetrators do belong to the military, because that is relevant in this case. Just like it was relevant in the first case that Jonathan Kang Lee should have been at trial for. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I really appreciate you guys sticking around and hearing my firsthand experiences of dealing with this system. I saw so much that could be improved on. All I have is what I think should happen, and all I have is my voice. Next week, we will be interviewing someone who is also very close to the first case where Jonathan Kang Lee could have faced pretrial confinement, but wasn't. What those charges were, what the apprehension was like when he eventually was found in connection to Nick's death. We will be interviewing with somebody who can give better insight as to the decision-making process as to why Jonathan Kang Lee was not placed in pretrial confinement. I'm Nicole Charcoti, and this is When Justice Goes AWOL.